So how is it anti-white to read an article from the 1800s that says white people were the slaves? This makes no sense. Cause they look, there's a group of white supremacists out there trying to trick us into making us think we are the slaves, and we're not. When they were the slaves, the white supremacists who telling you was a slave from Africa was the slave from Britain, was the slave from Ireland, was the slave from England. They were the slaves. And I proved it beyond a shadow of a doubt. Not beyond a reasonable doubt, not beyond the shadow of a doubt. In the book Lost Along the Way. Right? They try to tag my stuff anti-white. How is that anti-white? Not anti-black when you tell me since I was 11 years old that I'm a slave from Africa. Right? But they want to continue with this power play. All right, so we're going to talk about why certain so-called white people are really racist and where this racism comes from, right? Because obviously all white people aren't racist, but there's a group of white people who are very racist, and they're proud to tell you they're racist, and they call themselves white supremacists, and it is what it is. There's a group of people who don't like black people, and this is not a secret. Okay, so the question is how come they hate us so bad? And what we think is the simple answer is that they hate us so bad because they don't like the way we look. They think they treat us so bad, and they've been willing to do all these just crazy things to us because they don't like the way we look. And I've never seen anybody really because if you look at children and how they are, you don't see them fighting each other, because children fight. They fight. And they fight over the smallest, stupidest things. They fight over toys. They fight over what game we gonna play. They fight over a lot of stuff. But they don't fight over, what color you are. They don't do that. And the ones who do it, because there's a few who start doing that, it's because they were raised in that type of household that's racist. So I'm talking about the kids who aren't raised in that. So you don't see that unless they're being taught that at a very young age. So if kids aren't just doing it, what do grown-ups do it for? Where do they learn this? And to the point where we have all these big, giant historical things that have happened to so-called black people by so-called white people. And we're supposed to believe the storyline that's told, because the storyline that they tell us is it's because they're black and we're white. And we're white supremacists. Why? Because we feel like white is supreme. We are better than you. Why? Because our skin is white. I mean, it doesn't carry a lot of weight when you really break it down and think about it. So I want to really get into it because that's not the reason. Okay, that's not the reason. Okay, it's not because we're black and they're white. Why do they get caught whitewashing history constantly? Like they're constantly getting caught doing this to the point where just the other day, the president of Russia, right? We're talking about the president of the biggest nation out there that is supposed to be against America. The biggest one, right? The president, Vladimir Putin, pulled out his big box of historical documents that they've been keeping under lock and key for hundreds of years and showed all the historical documents from hundreds of years ago, proven that Jesus is black. Okay? So how come the other parts of the world whitewashed it when Vladimir Putin and the Russians, they came out and told the truth about it? And Vladimir Putin said that the Russians are going to be worshiping black Jesus from now on. This is just a week or two ago. Okay? So it's not maybe do they whitewash history. It's not maybe. It's been proven that history has been whitewashed. And you don't whitewash history because you just don't like the way somebody else looks, right? You might not like the way a certain person looks, but you don't paint them a new color. See, that there's more to it when you do that, right? And when you start doing stuff like that, it's because you have a secret to hide. See, that's what it is. You're hiding something when you're saying Jesus is white when you know he's black. You're hiding something when you're saying that certain groups of people, which a lot of people are starting to learn that the so-called Indians, right? Because they're not really Indians, but we'll just go along for the discussion's sake because we're not trying to do a video about it. But we'll just go along with the so-called American Indians. A lot of so-called black people are starting to find out that, oh, they're black too, right? Even the black people lived in Europe. The European kings and queens are black people. See, we're starting to learn a lot about this cover-up. And why would you cover up things like that? Maybe because you have a big secret. Is why usually when somebody's covering up something, it's because they're trying to hide a secret. They're trying to hide the truth. So why don't they just want to tell the true story? See, because that doesn't work for the way they've been able to live for the last 100 and some years, right? The truth doesn't work for them. Right, especially this last 60, 70 years since the 80s and since 70s and 60s, especially since integration, in the 1950s and 40 after World War II, after their economy started booming and they started getting money and this generation is like at the tipping point where everything's about to start sinking. And not just sink. It's just the truth is about to start come out about the people who have been oppressed, right? And they want to tell us we're not oppressed. But little by little, because of the internet, see, now they know they're about to get caught in all these lies. So what they're trying to do at this point, because we're talking about groups of people, and I'm not talking about all white people. I'm talking about a specific group within the white. I'm talking about the white supremacists, okay? The ones who pretend they're your friends and then go to Klan meetings and put on their hoods and then come back out and pretend they're your friends again. Those are the ones I'm talking about, okay? So it's coming out little by little because of the internet that the truth is about to get exposed about who everybody really is. So what they're trying to do right now, these white supremacists, what they're trying to do is they're trying to keep control of the narrative, because they've had control of this narrative starting in around 1914 when Hollywood first came out. They started learning the power of mind control and the power of influence and the power of media when Hollywood came out. And that's when their first movie called The Klansman came out. Okay, they renamed it to Birth of a Nation. Okay, and they realized that when that movie came out, Klan membership skyrocketed because of this movie, right? Because it was about the Klan and the Klan saving the white woman from those evil black people who were trying to rape her, because they were just so thirsty to rape the white woman, right? This is what the movie was about. And so anyway, this is the very first Hollywood film. As a result of this film, the membership in the Klan just skyrocketed, and they said, "Wow, there's something to this." And they've been playing with Hollywood and mind controlling people ever since 1914. Okay. And they've been changing the history ever since. They started changing the history before it, but they sped it up with Hollywood, with the media, with the news, with the newspapers, etc. Okay. So they've got a narrative that they've built saying, hey, black people, black Americans are slaves from Africa. You know, they've been whooping us ever since they brought us over here. They found us in Africa in the jungle, throwing spears and butt naked. And they said, oh, let's go put those butt naked black people who just run around savages. Let's go put them to work. This is what they did. They said, and then they rounded us up, and they had guns and they had technology, and all we did was chuck some spears at them, and they just shot us up, and then they corralled us all up and threw us on slave ships, and only took 10 of them because they had guns, and they could take 1,000 of us, and we were so scared of their guns and their technology and the trinkets that they gave us, and so they bolted us all down to the floor and threw the ones who couldn't make the trip overboard, and the sharks were following, eating the people, and the slaves that couldn't make it, and they brought us over. They were raping our women, and this is the story they teach us. I went to school. This is what they taught. This is what they taught us. Right? So they want to keep control of this narrative, even though the narrative is getting exposed. Right? The narrative is about to get really blown out the water. Right? The narrative's about to get blown out the water. Why? Because of the internet. See, they used to be able to hide stuff easily. They used to be able to hide records. They used to be able to take all the records, put them in the graduate side of the libraries. We weren't even allowed to go to school, right? We weren't even allowed to go to the university. And the ones who did, okay, then you have to go to the graduate side of the university to even find this stuff, and the only way you're going to look for it is if you even know to look for it. So we didn't even know to look for it. Why? Because generation after generation, and that's what I'm saying, we're dealing with a group of white supremacists who plan their agenda out by the generation, right? We got so-called black people today who can't see past tomorrow. They live in paycheck to paycheck. They're not making plans for next year. They're not making plans for 5 years from now. They're not making plans for their children and grandchildren and how are we going to pass on the dynasty. And they're not doing that. They wondering if they're going to have something. They're making plans. Can I eat tonight? Some of them, right? That's how some of them's living, right? That's how a whole lot of them are living. There's a lot of people who ain't living too good out here right now, right? But it's all about to change. They're trying to get the people who have changed this narrative are trying to keep the narrative that we are slaves from Africa, and they're trying to keep control of this narrative that they built up that makes it them look like they're oh so great and powerful, and we're just so backwards and dumb, and the spear chuckers who couldn't defeat those technologically advanced oh so great white people, right? This is what they teach us. This isn't like, oh, this is what they teach us in school. This is whoever's gone to school, this is what they teach us. Okay, so they see that the truth is starting to come out. So what are they going to do? What's their plan to get ahead of it? Okay, because they want to still control this narrative. And they're like, okay, so we're going to keep hiding the real truth, right? But we got to give you some more pieces. And we got to do it in a way to where we seem like we're still the oh so powerful great white man. Right? This is what the white supremacists are trying to do right now, right? They want to keep controlling the narrative to where we're all just equal, okay? And we're all friends now, while still hiding the real truth, see? And that's the problem. That's the problem, see? Because it's time to just tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth, right? That's what we're about to do. That's what we doing right here on this channel. We just about to tell the whole truth and knock it out the water. We're not going for just listening to some fake narrative that makes them look like they're the old so mighty slave master anymore, because that's not true. Okay, that's not true. So they want to give us some little pieces and facts because they know we're finding them anyway. So once they do that, we'll stop digging, because we'll sit up there and start thinking, oh, look, he's helping us. See, they're trying to help us. When no, they're not. These white supremacists are not trying to help you. They're putting on Klan hoods, and they secretly don't like you. Okay? And there's a group of white supremacists who pretend that they like you when they don't like you. They put on Klan hoods, and they have meetings on how we can destroy this generation of so-called black people. This is what white supremacists do. Okay? Okay, we got to get a few things straight. Right? They're going to give us some pieces so we can stop digging for the truth. Because they know when the real truth comes out, if the real truth comes out, they're in trouble. Right? So they're trying to get out ahead of this because they know what's coming. See, the white supremacist knows what's coming. They know what they've been hiding. Right? There's a lot of white people who don't know what they've been hiding. They just go to school and learn the same thing we learn. Right? That we slaves from Africa. We believe it. They believe it. They think they're better than us. Why? Because we were the slaves and their ancestors kicked our asses. Right? According to the story. Right? And we didn't even fight back. We were too dumb because we were just spear chuckers. Right? And they had the guns and technologies, and they were so far more advanced. And we didn't even have ships. We never even left Africa. We were just living out in the jungle, right? This is what they teach us. It's not true at all. So we about to get into it. There's I was watching on the African Diaspora channel. There's this white guy on there, and they're basically talking about this. They show this clip of a white guy. He's out there just eating in the winter somewhere, eating in the snow, talking about how white people have to start telling the truth about history, when I'm seeing right through this whole thing. See, they're not seeing through it, but I'm seeing right through it, right? So they're praising him for what they're calling black-white history, because he wants to start teaching black-white history. And this is how they start being slick. Okay. So he's on there talking about how white people need to start teaching the truth. But the way they tell it, for example, they want to keep acting like they want to keep inserting these small lies that make that keep them controlling the narrative. Okay, so that's where the problem comes in at. So, just for example, with the Wilmington massacre, a lot of people don't know what the Wilmington massacre is. Wilmington, South Carolina, where there's a group of these white supremacists back in 1898, I believe is the year it happened. They came in and they took over the government, the entire government. And then after they came in, and the way they did it was they came in with their guns and they said, you know what? Nobody's allowed to vote except for white people. And if you do have the audacity to vote for anybody black, then we're going to shoot you dead right on the spot. And if any white person has the nerve to vote for anybody for Democrats, okay, if you vote, and this isn't a political discussion, we just talking truth right now. So I don't care about Democrat and Republican. That's a whole nother discussion. It ain't got nothing to do with what I'm talking about. I'm just telling you the facts of what happened in Wilmington. Okay, they said the party of Andrew Jackson, which is the Democrat Party, and Andrew Jackson committed genocide on so-called black people. But we're just gonna hold off on that for right now. Okay. What the Ku Klux Klan and the White League did, they came in and they said, if anybody votes, they went to all the voting polls. They had hundreds of people at each voting poll with guns. And they said, if anybody votes, we're going to kill you if you don't vote Democrat, period. Okay. And they massacred people. That's why it's called the Wilmington Massacre. Okay. They went in there and they killed up a bunch of people. And then after they killed up a bunch of people, and this was all over raping somebody over a white woman, right? Same story, right? It's always over this. Something has to do with sex and a white woman. Okay. So anyway, so they end up taking over the government, right? But see, when he tells the story, and this is the slick part, when he tells the story, he says that they had an integrated government with black and white people working together like kumbaya, and these white supremacists came in. No, see, that's where they want to take your power away from you. See, because it wasn't a white and integrated. It wasn't an integrated government. Wasn't nobody going for no integration at that time in the 1890s. Are you crazy? Wasn't no integrated government. This was one of the last places where black people controlled the entire government was in South Carolina. This was the final straw, with the final destination, the last place we had left. Because see, what we don't know is we used to control all of America. America was ours forever. It was forever ours, right? Up until July 4th, 1830. And that's the first defeat we got handed on July 4th, 1830 with Andrew Jackson in the Trail of Tears. And we think that, Andrew Jackson, he kicked out the Indians, the Red Indians, and moved them to Oklahoma. No, he kicked out the black people. The Battle of New Orleans, okay? The battle in New Orleans, right? Because there was two of them. You got the War of 1812 battle that actually happened in 1815. That's a whole nother one. But that's the beginning of the end, okay? Because in 1830 is when they finally took out so-called black people in New Orleans, in Galveston, and this is when they started the Trail of Tears. Okay? So my point is that when talking about these things it's supposedly because white people don't like the way black people look, right? So they go in and massacre people. No, they're not massacring people because they think they don't like your hairstyle. They're not massacring people because they don't like the color of your skin. This isn't, the white supremacists, that's what they do. No, that's not. There's a reason behind it. There's a good reason behind the white supremacists have a real good reason behind what they do. And it has nothing to do with what you look like. It just happens to be, that's the identifier mark to let them know who did it to them. Okay? But we're going to get into it. Right? So this Wilmington Massacre, it wasn't like this guy tells it, because the way he tells it is, we were all working together because, the white guy was sharing power with the black man, and he let you guys come on in and sit at the table with him, and then those evil white supremacists came in and took us both over. That's how he tells it. No. That's not how it happened. And when he tells the story like that and you believe it like that, it makes you feel like he's superior, because we all know we were just slaves from Africa, and the good guys from South Carolina brought us into power, and they were trying to change things. And then those evil white supremacists came in, and and tried to see, this is what they doing. It's such a slick, it's such a slick way of doing it. But we about ain't nobody getting away with nothing slick today. Not today. So what's another thing that he talked about? Black Wall Street. Okay. What we know of as Black Wall Street. See, because there was lots of Black Wall Streets. We just don't know that. They only tell you about one, right? In Tulsa, Oklahoma. Now, Tulsa, Oklahoma was where, remember I told you about the Trail of Tears? Right. That's where you had two choices. If you was a black man in 1830, after Andrew Jackson and his allies defeated the so-called Black Americans army. See, we actually had an army, and we had guns. We had guns. We weren't chucking spears. Okay. So we about to tell the truth about it. But the Trail of Tears, which Andrew Jackson signed off on, he was the president and the general of the army who defeated, with the help, because he didn't do it by himself, with the help of the French and the Africans, okay? With the help of the French and the Africans, they ended up defeating the Black Americans' army. Now, what did we mean the Black Americans had an army? We were slaves from Africa, right? No, we weren't, see? And this is why they don't want us to know the truth. They don't want us to know who we are. But we about to find out who we are. Now, why did they bomb Black Wall Street? Well, Black Wall Street is Oklahoma. Where was the Trail of Tears? See, it wasn't red Indians getting kicked out of the forest and getting taken to Oklahoma. It was so-called Black Americans who were getting kicked out of New Orleans, Houston, Galveston, Tallahassee, Atlanta, Birmingham, Biloxi, right? All of these southern places, southern cities, Tampa, Virginia, all of these southern places, Memphis, Nashville, all of these big southern cities, right? The Trail of Tears, you had a choice. You could either say that you're African, and this is where the African slave comes from. This is where they got the idea for it, okay? You could either say that you were African and you got to stay if you were a so-called Black Indian, okay? And they'll be like, oh, well, you know, the Indians had a choice if they wanted to stay on their ceremonial land, because they want you to think that we were just, the so-called Indians are butt-naked spear chuckers too, right? Who are savages and live out in the jungle, right? But what we don't know, right, is that, no, they were talking about New Orleans. They were talking about Houston. They were talking about Dallas, okay? They were talking about all of these big cities, Baton Rouge, okay? All of these big cities, they gave you a choice. The French army and Andrew Jackson's American army and the African army came in together and teamed up against so-called Black Americans' army. And they fought a war against our army. Okay? Our army lost the war. They gave us a choice. They said, are you African? They knocked on everybody's door. Are you African or are you American? Are you African? Okay, you can stay. You American? Hop on that Trail of Tears. This is our house now. All that money you have, we need that. Matter of fact, cut her head off. Cut their head off. Kill their babies. Right? This is why they call it the Trail of Tears. They kicked everybody out. And they want to say that the Red Indian, this is what happened to him. No, that's not what happened to him. He was on the side of Andrew Jackson fighting against us. Okay? They ended up giving him reservations. They gave him more at first, but then they end up taking a lot of it back because they said, oh, we're stronger than you. So all that stuff you guys helped us take, we'll take half of that back. So he ended up getting some reservations out of it. Right? And they start being like, we're going to tell y'all secret on you. And they said, okay, look, we're going to give you some casinos. Right? So they paid them off. Every time everybody get mad, one of the allied groups get mad and they like, oh, you just going to keep on doing us wrong? They say, oh, yeah. And then they say, okay, look, guys, we don't want these Black Americans coming. Remember how crazy they are. Okay, we'll pay you off. And that's what they do. That's why the Indians have these reservations in casinos now. Because I remember when they didn't have the casinos. And I remember when they was getting mad. And I remember when they was about to tell the secret. Right? And they hurried up and paid them off. But anyway, back to Black Wall Street. If you didn't claim to be African for whatever reason, then you got put on that Trail of Tears. If they knew you weren't African, you got put on that Trail of Tears. And that Trail of Tears, where did it go? To Oklahoma. Okay. So Oklahoma was the new designated place for so-called Black Americans, right? Unless, see, because they didn't move all the Black Americans out, unless you said, I'm Black, I'm a Black African. And why did being a Black African work? Because, see, we get told that white people came and got us, scooped us up from Africa by the millions, but that's not what happened. See, we used to own America. All of America was ours. We had an army to go along with it with guns. Okay. The so-called white people ganged up with the so-called Africans. Okay. They ganged up after the French Revolution. After the French Revolution, the so-called white people, the French army came with the French-speaking Africans. If you ever notice, all the Africans, most of the Africans, right? They speak French. They come over here and they start speaking the French. Yeah, this is why. This is why. That French influence, the Creole, the French, all that French influence in Louisiana, and when the Saints come marching in, we don't want to get into that right now. We're not about to get into that right now. But see, the same white guy who's talking about, well, they need to start teaching about Black Wall Street and what white people did to those lowly Black people in Black Wall Street. They kept bombing them. We need to talk about how the white people came in and killed all the Black people in the massacre of South Carolina and Wilmington. See, they keep on talking about it like we was just also helpless always. We have no power. We're also helpless. And white people just come in and massacre us at will. This is the way he want to tell it. So, but this is their narrative. This is their game, trying to get ahead of it, to try to act like the powerful people are trying to help us now. Us weak, helpless little people. Okay, so they don't want to let go of this narrative that they have all the power, right? When they don't have all the power, and they never have had all the power. They ganged up with the French army and the African armies. They came in, they won. They won the war. The French and the Africans went back home and left them with us. And then after our army was gone, they committed genocide on the civilians. And they went crazy on the civilians. This is what happened. Okay? Right? They weren't fighting the army anymore. Now they're just fighting grandma and mom and dad and the little kids. See? So they don't want to let go of this narrative. Tulsa is one of the main cities in Oklahoma where the so-called Indians moved to. But we're not talking about red Indians. We're talking about the Black so-called Indians, the Aboriginal people of America. Okay? That's who we're talking about. They weren't really Indians. This is just a fake name that they were given. But they keep on changing all our names, right? They change our names all the time. From Indians to Negroes to coloreds to Black to African Americans. And now the new one is people of color, right? They circle them back. They couldn't think of a new one this time. So now we're people of color, right? No, we're not. We actually have a real name. We have a real name, right? But Tulsa is one of those main cities where the Black Indians who weren't really Indians, that's where they were sent to, right? And since we did have all we had an army and we owned all of America, and we had the largest economy of the world at the time belonged to us, see? Because of that, right? We had money. See? So they didn't get away with all our money. We took a lot of that wealth, although they did steal a lot of our wealth. After Andrew Jackson and his army, right? And afterwards committing genocide on us, where they say a third of all Black Americans were killed at this time during this 7-8 years after 1830. Okay. Right. They don't tell any of that part out. Right. And they don't tell how they got any help because they act like they did it all by themselves. And they didn't do it all by themselves. They had a lot of help from a lot of different groups of people, not just the Africans, right? They had help with other groups of people too. But this isn't the class for that, right? So after this war, the Africans and the French, right, they set up colonies here, right? New governments. And these are new colonies that are owned by the church, okay, right? Because this is actually, the army is the Pope's army. And there's a video on the channel right now that talks about the Pope's army. I'm not going to get into that right now, but it was the Pope's army, the Catholic Christian army that did this. So they set up colonies in the same way, and they act like all colonies were set up like this. See, now they want to pretend that all colonies were set up like this, from the 13 colonies to, you know, how their story is that the white guy came over here and found a place and started setting up colonies, and they were adventurers and settlers. No, they weren't. No, they weren't. No, they actually weren't. See, the original 13 colonies were prisons. The original 13 colonies were prisons. So when they came up and set up their colony on 1830 in New Orleans, that was a prison as well. They turned New Orleans into a prison, right? The only difference was the people who were in prison, who they put in prison, right? It flip-flopped. Because at first it was so-called white people who from England who were who filled those prisons, right? And then it flip-flopped because the French army and the Africans who came with them, called Zouaves, they came in together and they end up freeing all of the prisoners. And these prisoners, they left them in charge, right? The English prisoners who were sent here as so-called indentured servants, but they changed their real as prisoner. They were prisoners, right? They were serving prison sentences. They left. They moved here from England, right? Those are the people who they set free. That's why they talk about liberty all the time. That's why they talk about freedom all the time, because they got their freedom on July 4th, 1830. Okay. So anyway, I'm just telling you some of the highlights of these secrets that they keep, because they don't want this coming out, right? And the only way they want it to come out is in a way where they maintain control and maintain their controlling nature, the controlling of the narrative that they built up for all these years. Okay. But this guy is on there saying we need to have something called white black history, but they can't and won't just come out with the real truth. And what's the real truth? The truth that proves that. See, the truth that they're trying to push, and the truth that this guy who acts like he's your friend, because he's trying to educate white people who don't know. Oh, they know. See, this is the problem. You think they don't know who you are. They know who you are, and they know you're not slaves from Africa. They know what happened. You forgot who you are, and they purposely made you forget who you are, but they know who you are. They're trying to keep control of this truth that proves they are boss hog in charge. They've been kicking our asses all over the place, and we should be so scared of them. This is the truth that they want, the narrative that they want to keep, right? Because they don't want to tell you the truth about how, they needed the French and they needed the African armies to help take us out, right? And they were just fighting a bunch of women and children after they took our army out with the help of, right? After Andrew Jackson took the army out, and it wasn't by himself. It was with the help of the French army and the African army. After they did that, right? And the African and French army left. Oh, the people who stayed, the prisoners who got released, right? The prisoners who got released from prison put us in prison. See, that's why they don't like us, because we put them in prison. And what do we put them in prison for? For committing crimes. Just what's wrong with that? It's okay for them to put us in prison, right? When we commit crimes. Well, when we were in charge, we put them in prison for committing crimes. And what did they do? They got the French army and they got the African army to come in and break them out of jail. This is what liberty is. This is what they celebrate. This is what the celebration of July 4th really is. Okay? I wrote a whole book about it. See, so they don't want to tell the truth. They want to just tell part of the truth. They don't want to tell the whole truth. See, but we're going to tell the whole truth. See, they were getting sent to America, the American 13 original colonies. They weren't playing flutes. No, they weren't playing flutes. They were getting sent here as prisoners. Okay? They were getting sent here as prisoners. Okay? And the abolitionists started calling the prisoners slaves. The kings and queens of Great Britain, right? They started sending all of their prisoners. They made a deal with the Emperor of America, okay? They made a deal to send their prisoners here. And we built prisons. Those 13 colonies were all prisons. The word borough means prison, right? The 5 boroughs of New York, Queens, Brooklyn, Manhattan, right? No, those are all prisons. The word itself, borough, means prison. They were giant prisons. All of the colonies were prisons. And we weren't British, see? Because white people are British. So-called white people are British. Again, if some of you guys have watched some of my other videos, you'll know that the ish, right? My pants are black. My shirt is red, right? But if somebody wanted to say something similar to red, they could say it's reddish. And we know that it's not red. It's like red, but it's not red. And that's what British is, because the British is so-called white people. Scottish is so-called white people. But the Scotties are so-called black people. The Brutes are so-called black people. Okay? The kings and queens of England were Brutes and Scotties. Okay? These are the Stuart kings and queens who are from England. The kings and queen of England today are German. They are not from England. They are from Germany. Okay? They used to tell everybody that up until the 20s. And then they said, we need to start keeping this undercover because people aren't going to want to hear that we're not British or Brutes. This is where the word brute comes from. We've heard that phrase before, exterminate the brute, right? The big bad brute. Right. They're talking about the black people from England. Those are the Bruties. It's not Britain, it's Bruton. And the people are the Bruties, not British. The Scotties, not Scottish. White people are Scottish. But the black people from Scotland are Scotties. Right? But they play this name game. And so then later on, he talks about how, well, you know, the FBI and CIA, they've been involved with the eradication of so-called black people, and they've been taking their wealth, well, forever. See, he uses these names that we look at as powerful and concludes this power is forever when no, it's not. And it wasn't. It's not now, and it wasn't. No, this is just an absolute lie. But it's because they want to keep control of this narrative that they've built up. Right? Why? Because white people got their freedom from so-called black people starting on July 4th, 1830. And were free nationwide at the end of the Civil War. Abraham Lincoln freed the white slaves. This is what they don't want to tell you. See? They don't want to tell you this part. And I proved it. They don't want you to know that so-called black people brought white people to America as prisoners, and the abolitionists rebranded those prisoners as slaves. And they rebranded the slave masters as pirates and said they were committing piracy. And the prisoners that they were bringing were slaves. And why were they slaves? Because they worked for free. Well, almost free. They had to work to pay off their trip of getting brought over here. Well, prisoners don't just sit in their jail cells today. They don't just sit there and fight all day. Oh, that's all they show you. Oh, prisoners just sit in their jail cells. They don't do nothing all day. Yeah, right. Half the stuff you go shopping for at the mall was made in a prison. Half the furniture that you buy at the furniture stores was made in prisons. Food you eat is made on prison farms. See, this is what they don't want to tell you. Right? You think prisoners just make license plates? Yeah, right. Some of the biggest brands that are in the stores are all. They make all the stuff. The prisoners make all of that. Those black people in prison. You think they just sit around and don't do nothing all day? No. They got jobs. They go to work. They work all day and come home and watch TV when they're done. And they get up in the morning and go do it again. See, they don't have no problem saying that so-called black and teaching us in schools that black people were slaves and we slaves from Africa, and they don't have no problem humiliating us in school. I remember I was completely humiliated when I learned that I was a slave from Africa. And people started treating me different. Friends that I had before started treating me different when they found out that, oh, I'm a slave from Africa, and they was the slave master. I mean, I didn't like that at all. I didn't like that at all. And they don't have no problem doing that to us, right? But what I've been finding out is, because I've started, I've been posting up some articles that prove that no, white people were slaves. White people were the ones who was getting brought over here from Europe as slaves. Not it wasn't us. We were the ones bringing them over. See? And when you just start reading some articles, I start reading some articles from the time and post it. You can read some of them's on the channel right now. I got about 5 of them on the channel right now. I got people sitting up there trying to get my stuff took down and saying I'm anti-white. It's not anti-black when y'all sit up there and teach us in school that we slaves from Africa. So how is it anti-white to read an article from the 1800s that says white people were the slaves. This makes no sense. Cause they, look, there's a group of white supremacists out there trying to trick us into making us think we are the slaves, and we're not. When they were the slaves, the white supremacists who telling you was a slave from Africa was the slave from Britain, was the slave from Ireland, was the slave from England. They were the slaves. And I proved it beyond a shadow of a doubt. Not beyond a reasonable doubt, not beyond the shadow of a doubt. In the book, Lost Along the Way. Right? They try to tag my stuff anti-white. How is that anti-white? Not anti-black when you tell me since I was 11 years old that I'm a slave from Africa. Right? But they want to continue with this power play narrative to keep us thinking that they can just kick our asses. And he goes around and, he goes talking about how, we used to drown entire towns of black people. We massacred you and we drowned your entire towns. And we got to start telling the truth. And then he tries to be your friend. Here's the craziest thing. Right? But what he leaves out is the fact that black Americans had an army that had just been gotten disorganized by this huge natural disaster that they covered up in 1812. It got covered up in the early 1800s. And when we were disorganized, the French and their African friends came and attacked our army and set the prisoners free. The white prisoners from England set them all free. And they said, we're not going to do anything to them after this. And then after the French went home and the Africans went home, they went crazy on us and committed genocide on us. To who? To the civilians. Because why? Because the army had already been defeated. It had already been disorganized. See, it was only after this that the French army who teamed up with Andrew Jackson started to commit genocide on who? On our civilians. But they tell us they was just slaves from Africa. That we just slaves from Africa. So as he goes along, he keeps on going on and trying to act like he's your friend while he's steady trying to push this narrative that they're the powerful, the undefeatable, the ones who've been beating y'all up and kicking your asses and massacring you and raping your women and you didn't do nothing about it, when it's just so far from the truth. See, because they don't want to tell you the truth about them 13 colonies got set up were originally prisons, and so-called black people sent white people to America as their punishment for their crimes. See, they don't want to say how so-called black Americans had the largest economy in the entire world and ran the entire world and were the slave master forever. And we were the ones who sent them here to America. See, they were picking cotton. They were working in the factories. See, they don't want to tell you that. They don't want to tell you nothing about how they teamed up and had to team up with the Africans and the French, with the French-speaking black Africans, and the people of the French army of the French Revolution. Right. And it was only with their help, with their team, that they were able to defeat our army. All they want to do is talk about how they terrorized our civilians after our army was already disorganized. And we was really slaves from Africa and never had an army. We was just chucking spears. We was just some spear chuckers. And they committed genocide against us and stole a lot over an estimated $1 trillion worth of wealth is the estimate in today's money. See, so they know the truth is coming out. And so what's their new plan? Well, we got to give them some truth, but make it like we're still the power. Like we're just still the undefeatable so-called white guy who can kick their ass at will. This is what they're doing. They're playing a game with you, like a ringmaster plays with a lion, because they scared the lion might eat them. The Africans and French army freed the so-called white American, who is the criminal who was sent to America by black judges, by the black king and queen, the king's court. After our army had already been disassembled and disorganized, and their soldiers and their soldiers went home, the French army and the African army went home, the French-speaking Africans went home. They left us with the prisoners, and the prisoners had a grudge. See, this is why they don't like so-called black Americans, because we were sending them to prison. We sent them to America as prisoners. See? Now what makes more sense? They didn't like us because A, we have curly hair and dark skin. Or B, because we sent them over here as prisoners for committing crimes. And with the help of a group who were mad at us, who were on our side at one point, we got to infighting, and they set our prisoners free. And our prisoners went crazy on us and started putting us into the prison after our army was already defeated. What makes more sense? See, you got to ask yourself this. After our army had already been disassembled and the soldiers, the prisoners started putting on Klan outfits. They Klan costumes, and they started terrorizing us, right? They stopped us from voting because we were the only ones who could vote. They changed the constitutions so that they could vote once they got power. And how did they get power? From stopping us from voting. They couldn't even vote. So-called white people couldn't vote in America. I proved it. It's not maybe. I proved it. It was only after all of these things happened, that's when they started making all these new rules that we can't eat in their restaurants anymore. After they gained political power in the 1890s and early 1900s, right? Because during slavery and after slavery, everybody could eat at the same restaurant. Now, how does that even make sense? See, that doesn't make sense when you listen to their story they teach you, right? That doesn't even make any sense because it's a big lie. That's why it doesn't make sense. It was only at this time we couldn't eat in their restaurants anymore. We couldn't drink out of the same water fountains anymore. We had to ride on the back of the bus. This is when all of that started. All of that started in the early 1900s. Why would it start in the early 1900s if they were the mighty slave master the whole time and they hated us just because of the way we looked and they were raping our women and they were bringing us from Africa? Wouldn't they not want to eat with us then too? Why wait until the 1900s to start making up those rules? Oh, because they're telling you a lie about what happened. Maybe that's why. Right? We couldn't use the same bathroom no more. Why? Because the prisoner got help breaking free. getting his liberty, right? The Statue of Liberty given to him by who? The French. Think about that. The Statue of Liberty given to who? To America by the French. And the French army is the one who helped free them from who? From the black Negro. With the help of the black African and the red man. And then after they freed the prisoners and their allies won, after the armies went back home, they started terrorizing all of our civilians. They started putting on all the veterans who had fought in the war. They started putting on their Klan hoods. And that this is how they took political control, because they didn't have political control before this. If they had control before that and they hated us so much just because of the way we looked, which is what they like to tell you, and they brought us as slaves from Africa, then why did the law for that we can't use the bathroom just come out at the same bathrooms and water fountains and swimming pools and all of that? Why did that just come out in the 1900s? Because they're telling you a fat lie. They stole our money. They scared our civilians out of voting. We didn't have an organized army anymore. They scared our civilians out of power because our army had been defeated. They were attacking men, women and children, terrorizing men who were by themselves. They would jump in big groups and grab some 2 or 3 black men, and there was 30 of them. And then they'd burn them on a cross with their Klan hoods. This is what they was doing. These were army veterans who were locked up, who were prisoners from England serving prison time. And we're supposed to believe that they did all this massacres and drowned out towns and they did all this, and keep in mind, they didn't do it by themselves. They did it with the help of the French army and the French-speaking African army. And they all ganged up on us after a natural disaster that we're recovering from, when half of our stuff is all crumbled to the ground. And then they took us out. And then the French army went home, the African army went home and left us with the prisoners that they freed. That's the grudge they have against us. It's not over the way you look. They know who you are. You don't know who you are. They were mad they got sent here by black judges in England, and they didn't feel like their crimes were that bad anyway. Just like prisoners today. They didn't want to work for free. They were prisoners. Prisoners today work for free. They make $0.25 an hour, something stupid like that, damn near free. They were prisoners. They got broke free from the prison with the help of their African friends who are still their friends. They know the secret truth too. It's time to let the real truth out. Not their fake version of what they want to give you so they can keep this narrative of them being the mighty old powerful white person. No. We're about to tell the truth. The truth will set you free. You had an African and French army behind you. You didn't do this by yourself. They left and you've been terrorizing the civilians ever since. Tell the truth. They know what they did to us. You don't have to teach them. They don't need to teach each other. They know exactly what's going on. And you got a small group of them We don't need to teach them anything. They know exactly who you are, so-called black man. They know exactly who you are, so-called black woman. They know exactly what is going on. And they're playing a mind control game against you. These white supremacists are playing a mind control game against you because they made a vow to never let white slavery happen again after they got help. They got set free by the French army, who gave them the Statue of Liberty. What does liberty mean? You got your freedom. Okay? That's what they did. They got their freedom. And I wrote a whole book about it. Because there's so much. I'm just giving you the summary. I'm just giving you the book report. Like, this is an hour. I'm just talking for an hour or so right now. The book is 30 some hours. It's a 500 page book. It's super long. And it takes that long to break it all down so you can really, in order to prove it. So before you get on here talking about, oh, where's your evidence? Where's the proof? Where's the proof? Because that's the first thing that they want to do. The proof is in the book. It's called Lost Along the Way. I don't have 30 hours. Ain't nobody watching the 30-hour long video on here, right? That's not going to happen. Okay? It took me 3 years just to write it and about 15 years to research all of this just to write the book. Just to write it. So we talking about almost 18 years. I've been preparing this book for the last 18 years to get this thing right. I need you to go to lostalongtheway.org. Lostalongtheway.org. Become a member of the website. Get the book. You also get other videos. Videos that I can't put on here because it's too deep and I don't. Look, you got to go watch those videos over there. You got to watch those videos over there where I can just go all out. Because I can't always just go all out over here. But I can go all out on my own site. Right? I can go all out on this site. I can't go all out on this site. So I need you to go to lostalongtheway.org. I need you to become a member. I need you to read the book. Listen to the book. Like I said, it's super long. After you listen to it, you will be a new person, and you will not be able to get bamboozled ever again. You won't be able to get bamboozled no more. Right? You're going to know who you are, and you're going to know who everybody else in the world is. You're going to know, because we break it all the way down. We need to know who we really are as a people, and it's time that happens. Go to lostalongtheway.org. Peace and love.
This is a dangerous groups that we're dealing with now.